Hello, sports fans. I am C. Ron Allen, pinch hitting for Noah and Trey, who are out this week. Tonight, we have an impressive panel of guests who will discuss an important topic that they are very passionate about. Black celebrity activism has a long tradition in American politics. Black actors, artists, musicians, and athletes have a responsibility to use their celebrity platforms to raise the voice and concerns of Black people. In recent weeks, some of the loudest voices speaking up against racism and police brutality have come from the sports world. We see where star athletes are using their massive platforms to get involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. They certainly are keeping the momentum going around nonviolent protests as well as acts of civil disobedience, supporting equal and fair treatment by law enforcement and other groups in power. But for all of that hoopla controversy, little attention has been given to the influence of these Black athletes, activists, or sporting celebrities when it comes to Black political action. Our impressive panelist is comprised of Suncoast High School Jonathan Ojo, who played basketball at Webster University. Mr. Ojo, when he went undrafted in the 2017 NBA draft, making him an unrestricted free agent. We also have Mr. Don Stevens Jr., who played basketball at Grandview Prep here in Boca Raton. And he went on to play at LaSalle College in New England. That's in Newton, Massachusetts. Then he went over to Western New England, where he was a Golden Bear. He also played professionally in Spain until about a year ago. And finally, we have Mr. Brisley Estime, a graduate of Atlantic High School who held the ACC record in yards per punt return in 2015 and 2016. Now, Mr. Estime also played for Syracuse University as well as New York Jets. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Thank you.
Mr. Ojo, we saw where kneeling down during the national anthem to protest racial inequality and police brutality has been widely decried by a faction of American society who has accused Colin Kaepernick and other athletes of disrespecting the flag, the military, and the nation as a whole. Talk to me, if you will. Why do you think the Take a Knee movement sparked such a negative reaction among conservatives?
So for me, I feel like it was just a way to kind of distract people from what was actually trying to be talked about and discussed. I think Colin Kaepernick did a great job of making it clear that it was never about the flag. It was never about the veterans. I think the fact that it took place during the anthem is what sparked the outrage because to the American people, your anthem is kind of your emblem. That's what they feel most patriotic about. So the fact that he's taking a knee, there's kind of a strict law of codes that what they say you should and shouldn't do, what's decreed respectful. And I think so they took it as a direct attack on the American people, which I think is completely false a narrative they kind of painted just to kind of draw the conversation away from what was actually being discussed, which is Black bodies being strong in the street. And it's crazy because I went to school in St. Louis, and I was in Ferguson when Mike Brown got killed. And so my senior year of college, I decided to take a knee during the anthem because I was personally drawn to. I was blessed to kind of have the support of my coach, my teammates, my athletic director, but the backlash from kind of the community and the school was kind of the same from, what he experienced. And I'm not trying to compare myself to Colin Kaepernick or anything like that.
Right,
It was just
right.
interesting to see that the point of it was to start the conversation with people, but no matter how you explain it to them, no matter what you said, no matter how many times you would say it's not about the anthem, they still weren't trying to hear that. And like I said, to them, it's a direct attack on being American. And I think that's kind of where it got mixed up. I think that's why it continues to get mixed up because you don't want to see what's right in front of you because it doesn't pertain to you in that aspect. You can't really feel what the Black athletes are feeling because you're not in that situation. And so that's where the case of empathy kind of comes into play, where it's easy to have sympathy where you just, I feel bad for what you guys are saying is happening. But to me, that's not the truth. There's always an excuse when you bring up the discussion of why people are getting murdered. They shouldn't have resisted. They should have done this. And so, like I said, it's just ways to kind of take the narrative away from what's actually going on.
It's interesting you say that because from the NBA's new Black Lives Matter jerseys and the WNBA's Black Lives Matter warm up attire to even Major League Baseball players collectively deciding to kneel during the national anthem, sports teams and organizations, both in America and abroad, as you can attest to, Don, are certainly using their voices to ensure that justice is heard and served. And you know something? The public is accustomed to some NFL and NBA stars using their platforms to amplify opposition to police brutality. But in the sports world, those words are suddenly coming from all directions. Don, you played ball here at home and abroad. Why do you think activism in sports and among athletes is so taboo?
I really think it's because a lot of people just, they look at athletes and they kind of, it's like the shut up and dribble thing. They want us to kind of be just pawns in their game and they don't want us to have a voice. And when we do have a voice, it kind of, it really upsets them. And I think they just want us to be, the stereotypical dumb jock who just goes there, plays their sport, and is thankful that we're in this position, that we're playing this sport. But black people are tired. We're sick and tired of the injustice. We're tired of waking up every day and seeing somebody else getting killed or getting abused or anything of that nature by police or by anyone else. So I think that's kind of the reason why it's looked at as so taboo.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I agree. I think, as you said, he hit the nail on the head. I feel like, especially in America, they want you to have one job. The job is to entertain the people. I feel like sports aren't really, and even you can tell by how they react to when players are kneeling. I read a lot of the comment section and stuff like that, and most of it is, you're getting paid millions to play a sport like nothing else.
Hmm.
Like it's about the money. But I think it's because, in America, they really only respect the dollar sign, and so the value in the player is in the entertainment factor. You kind of relinquish your rights to be average citizen. You're not average no more. You've been elevated to a pedestal to where you kind of aren't held to the same standards. So now, yeah, you should be grateful that where you're at. You're not back where you were. You're not. They always try to highlight the situation that these players come from because they come from places where we come from, and it's not like, oh well, you're out of that now, so you shouldn't care about them. You're in a different status now. You're in a different tax bracket. Like, be grateful for where you're at. So everything that everybody else reacts to, you kind of don't have the same value in that sense. So
Right.
we're almost like cattle now. Herd mentality. You're there for one job, and if you stray outside those lines, like, get back in line.
Hmm.
Got you. Brisley, how do we get from that era where there was gross political apathy, if you will, to what's happening now, where you have players quite vocal? What do you think happened?
I mean, dealing with social media right now. You can hear me, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, dealing with social media right now, like every time something happens, like we find out on social media, like that be the only like so many people on social media that like it spreads so fast. Like it's crazy that like the LeBron, the Patrick Mahomes,
yeah.
it's crazy that it took them a little minute to realize like they gotta use their platform in order for this to stop. Like I agree with Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Kaepernick, I feel like he did. I feel like he did that just because that's the only way he could get attention. He can't go to somebody and say, "Okay, let's talk about Black Lives Matter." Da da da. They're not gonna listen. Him kneeling caught everybody attention. So I
So
feel like
right,
he did the. I feel like he did the right thing. I feel like that's the only way he could have went about it.
Bridge, you say he couldn't go to someone and talk about it. Why? Why couldn't he? He had as much right as anybody else out there on the field.
He did have that much right, but I'm saying if you go to someone and talk about it, they're gonna be like, okay, you would have to gather a lot of people in order to get the rest of the people attention. Like in order to get the owner of the NFL attention, NBA attention, you would have to get a lot of people. So him kneeling by himself, I feel like that sent a strong message out. It's not about the flag. It's about all these people that's killing us. Like they steady killing black people everywhere you look, every corner you look. Black people, black people. Like
You
it's
know, you
crazy.
you mentioned LeBron James. Let me take you back there. It was really the Trayvon Martin movement. You know, a great movement by LeBron, leading his then. You probably remember the Miami Heat team in a way that we had not seen in years. You had the hoodies and just using that tool. You know, to that didn't exist back in the 1960s and with the 90s with social media. So. To put things in context, like I said, back in the late 1960s and even in 1992 when we had the LA riots, there were mass protests that swept the country. The sports community was somewhat vocal, at least in the 60s. Some celebrity athletes then were deeply engaged. We had Jim Brown; he was quite outspoken on the issue, and we had some white athletes, Ron Mix in the NFL and the great Jack Kemp. They were involved. But for the most part, the level of involvement from the athletic community was nothing like we're seeing now. And you mentioned, the social media. Jonathan, talk to me a little, if you will. Uh, Social media and how it plays into today's protest certainly creates a stark difference than back in the 1960s when black athletes try to call attention to injustices. Today we see where Twitter is a platform to communicate. Talk to me a little about that.
First of all, I don't want to disrespect the contribution that those people before us made. I think about, as you said, the Jim Browns. I think about Bill Russell and how they went on strike for their season. I think about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think about Muhammad Ali. And I think the biggest difference between now and then is just pretty much the time that we're in. We're in the age of information right now, the social media era. I also think the difference is back then, the only way to get your point across was in person with the camera in your face. I think also back then they had a lot more to lose. You were seeing people being disenfranchised out before our very eyes. Muhammad Ali, when he didn't want to go serve in war, I feel like they tried to they did strip him of his boxing titles and things like that. And I feel like the good thing is that you're not going to see that same, besides Colin Kaepernick being black, but I think that's why it was so kind of drastic. But I feel like now social media is the best way to reach the largest amount of people in a short amount of time. I feel like back then, as I was saying, you kind of could go on a podium and you have cameras in your face. You know it's going to be the front page of the paper tomorrow. I think now I can send out a tweet as LeBron James, and I know at least 1 million people are going to interact with it. At least 1 million people are going to see it. I post on Instagram, at least 1 million people are going to interact with it. I have a post-game interview, at least 1 million people are going to see it. So I think it's athletes just using the platform that's given to them now where they can reach
Right.
the widest amount of audience, because I feel like now it's not a time where it's not targeted. You can't target people with saying Black Lives Matter. Everybody has to see it. I mean, because
Right. Right.
we're all living on the same earth. Everybody is kind of subject to what we're talking about. There's no innocent party. Everybody's guilty as far as I'm concerned, including us. I mean, but we got shouted from the rooftops to even be heard. And so I think the only way to do that is to use every kind of tool in our grasp, including social media, including their post game interviews, including radio, including all of the things that he's doing in the community. I feel like all those are screaming the same things, always revolving around the same issue, which is Black Lives Matter. So I think social media has become a big factor because, as I said, we see how many people are on social media. We see how it's used. We see how many people kind of are driven by social media in our present day. So I think it's just good marketing.
So it has to be more than just words. It has to be deeds.
Oh
Don, I
yeah.
noticed you're shaking your head. What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like also with how, people we're seeing more people being killed by police and stuff like that. We all know that's been happening. But back in the day, it wasn't really recorded and it wasn't able to be shown through social media. So now that that's like prevalent now, social media, I feel like everything is starting to be more televised and more people are tuning in, and that's why the movement is growing so much.
It's interesting you say that. I am. I'm reminded of the NASCAR movement, where NASCAR, took a stance on the Confederate flag some time ago. That really surprised me, and I'm sure some of you remember that back in June when NASCAR announced that it would ban the Confederate flag from its events and its properties. Uh, do you think NASCAR follows the logic, Jonathan, that you just mentioned? I thought this new rule could be, you know, detrimental to them and their viewership, which I assume is mostly conservative. Do you think this had an impact on them?
Yeah, I was shocked just like you were, and for a few reasons. I think one because, as you said, NASCAR is mostly conservative. It's mostly white, so we're the extra super minority. I mean, Bubba might have been. I don't watch NASCAR as much, but Bubba was the only name that I even recognized in that. So for them to do that league wide was kind of a big deal because, as you said, they're kind of isolating the majority of their viewers who are
Hmm.
either on the Confederate side and definitely are more conservative. And so I think that was definitely a step in the right direction. I think it definitely shows that once again that they're kind of putting the issue on Main Street because I feel like again if you're conservative white America, many of the times again it's not an attack or anything like that, but you're not even watching basketball or certain sports. You know, it might be baseball,
Right,
NASCAR,
right, right.
hockey. You know, things that are mostly once again white. And so for them to have that mainstream in their face, it kind of goes into the other arena of bringing awareness or more awareness, which is what needs to be had. And so, like I said, I was kind of taken aback, but definitely a step in the right direction.
Good, good, good. Don, about three months ago, back in early June, we saw where NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell released a statement admitting that the NFL was wrong in its handling of its players' participation in the Take a Knee protest movement, and declared that his institution believes in Black Lives Matter. He did so, however, without mentioning Cap, the NFL, as well as International Federation Association Football and the U.S. Soccer, have recently reconsidered their stance on athletes' right to protest. Why do you think these sports institutions seem to have become more accepting towards Black activism today?
I think it's just funny because it's kind of like how it's just like they kind of piggyback off everybody else. Once they see that it's bad or it's frowned upon that they don't support a certain thing or a certain movement, then they jump right on it. So I think it just shows that Goodell especially he don't really care. I mean he's there, he's the commissioner in the NFL. He's got that. The NFL is a predominantly black league. You telling me that nobody came up to him or talked to him about this, and he's just now deciding, oh, this is acceptable because everybody else is, and it just shows me, and for him to not even mention Kaepernick, like that's how this all started. For him to not mention Kaepernick just shows me, he's sort of a same. He's at fault as well for them blackballing him from the league. And I don't think that him jumping on the bandwagon now, it kind of just showed me that you're just doing this as a business move and
Lip
not
service, huh?
yeah, exactly. And it's not coming from the heart. It's not coming from the heart. So that's how I felt about it when I saw that.
Brizza, what do you think?
I mean, I like what Don said. It ain't coming from the heart. Because if you didn't say anything from the beginning, it's
Hmm.
like, damn, why you trying to jump in now? Like the situation with Drew Brees. He said
Right,
what he
right.
had to say. He said what he had to say. Ain't no taking
Yep.
it back. We already
Yep.
know how you feel. We
Hmm.
already know how you feel. You can't take it back. So it's like once you say something wrong, we're gonna look at you wrong. We already know you're not on our side.
Okay, so Jonathan, one of the biggest areas of concern has long been the lack of Black head coaches across all sports. Do you think the Black Lives Matter movement, or can the Black Lives Matter movement motivate the sports world to move beyond these what I call cosmetic changes into something that's more lasting and impactful?
So before I touch on that, I just kind of want to mention something off of the last thing, and it goes
Yeah.
into this. But I think one of the biggest things that we're running into now is performative activism and performative allyship, and I think that's a scary place to be because as we were talking about with Roger Goodell, I think now it's kind of trendy. You're almost hurting yourself if you don't speak about it or do something. So with the black coaches, I feel like they're gonna move in the direction of just hiring them just to say they hired them. And I don't want that. I don't think we as people want that. I think we want to be hired because of our qualifications. And if they could look me in my face or the public and say we didn't hire any of these coaches because of qualifications, I could take that. But I know that's not the case. And so, as I'm saying, I think it will lead to an uptick of black coaches, but I don't want it to be a sympathy card. I think the black coaches that I see, the black coaches that I know, the ones that I've known over the years, they deserve to be exactly where they at, and they deserve to climb up the ladder just like anybody else. And so I think if they're getting those nods, if they're getting those head coaches positions, I think they need to get them because they're qualified. And because of that, that's why, because I'm saying that, is because I could hire a coach in a bad situation, a bad organization, just to hire him. I give him a 1-year stunt. The team wasn't going to be good. It's a rebuild program. I
Mhm.
fire him the next year and say I did my job. And I feel like that's not doing anything. I feel like the biggest discrepancy is that black coaches have a shorter leash than everybody else. We've seen this in in every area, every facet of life. I mean, you can't make a mistake. And this is coming from their mouths as well. I mean, they feel like they're working with constant pressure on their back when as as another head coach, I can go through 3-4 losing seasons. I don't even got to look over my shoulder. I know I'm good with the organization. I know they
Yeah.
like me as a person, not even as a coach. and, and so that's where the politics play in. And so I feel like, if there's going to be a change in up to the coaches, let it be something solid to where let us have more owners. Let us have more people making the decisions of hiring the coaches. More people that have a say along the whole process of everything, of all the team involvement, all the team activities. I feel like that's more of a solid, concrete move than just saying, you know what, we're going to put a clause in the NFL contracts that say we have to have 1/3 of the league to have a black coach. Like, that's a handout. I don't think we want that.
Don, how do you feel about that?
I agree, man. I feel like no real change. I don't feel like any real change is going to happen until we have more blacks or African Americans at the higher positions of power. When we start seeing more black owners, black presidents, um, that's when I think there's going to be real change.
Well, we
Right
just saw
now,
one recently. Washington just got their first one, so that's a start,
exactly.
right?
That's a start. Toronto has one, I believe, and that's about it. But and then also Michael Jordan is a black owner, or I believe he owns or a part owner,
Part owner.
and but yeah, once we start seeing more people that look like us at those positions, I think that's when real change will happen. Because right now, Jonathan's right. They hire some of these coaches for like the interim period, or they hire these coaches for like the rebuilding period, and then once they rebuild the team, like a great example to me was the Golden State Warriors.
Warriors, yeah.
The Golden State Warriors, Mark Jackson built that team from the ground up, drafted those guys, everything, groomed them, got them better. Soon as he did something that they didn't like, fired. Gave the job to a white coach and Steve Kerr, and the rest is history. And that's I see that way too many times. I see that too many times, and that has to stop. So until
Yeah.
we get those people in power and in the higher positions, I don't think there will be any real change.
Interesting. On a side note, Jonathan, you're very passionate about human rights issues as we're seeing here tonight, and I know you're also deeply concerned about youth causes, as your family started a school down in Haiti some years ago, I recall. How is that going? Is it still in operation?
Oh, yeah. So going real good, I think that's where I kind of saw the need because another facet of this is that we're only worried about black people on U.S. soil, but we got, brothers and sisters all around the world who are in worse situations economically, you know, mentally, emotionally, everything. And, they need the help just as well as we need it. And so my mom kind of had her dream. And so they started a nonprofit back in '08, and they have 2 schools in Haiti, and it's going so well right now. They're about to build a bigger campus because literally running out of room for the students. And so I think that's where it all kind of came to click for me. Like, wow, like there's a need, there's support. I think we just kind of have to fill it. And so it's been really encouraging to see kind of support that's garnered. I feel like everybody who knows me in South Florida from all of my stunts, and even
Mm-hmm.
where I was at in school, kind of supported the school, and supported my mom's nonprofit. So definitely doing well. Definitely can always use the support.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll be mindful of that. Now, Don, talk to me a little bit. You played back over in Winnick, and then you went overseas. Where'd you play overseas in Spain?
I played in Valencia the first year, and then the second year I played in Cartagena.
Hmm.
So it's like the south of Spain.
Okay, and how was the experience? How was the
I
experience over
think
there?
kind of piggybacking off of what Jonathan just said, we care about the black people or the African Americans on the U.S. soil. But going overseas, I saw a lot of racism towards just Africans. Like,
Yep.
there's a lot of African immigrants that come over to Europe, not just in Spain and like Italy, France. You see it, and one of the first things I remember when I got over to Spain is people were looking at me because I was in like a smaller area. It's like I was in Valencia, but like in a smaller little village away from there. But Valencia was the main city, and one of the first things when I first got there, people were staring at me, looking at me crazy, looking at me like I was I don't like I was African. And then as soon as they found out that I was American, they treated me completely differently. And I
Mm.
thought that was one of the worst things that I saw out there because it's like you consider me because I'm American that I'm above another African,
So
but
you're
that's
telling
not the
me that racism exists outside of this country?
oh 100%, 100%. 100%. It's crazy because I didn't really I mean me being naive, I didn't really think there was that many black people in Europe until I actually got there. And when I got there, I was surprised because they treated them as if they were beneath everybody else. You walk on the streets, you see a lot of Africans, they're selling clothing or jewelry or stuff like that, and some of these Spanish people, I'm looking at the way that they're just talking to these people, and they talk to them like as if they're beneath them.
Okay.
And I thought that was one of the biggest eye openers for me because honestly, I didn't know that it was that racism was as prevalent overseas as it is.
Okay. Interesting. Now, Brisley, I know that since you returned home, you've been working on doing some work here in your hometown. You've had the Brisley handball tournament a few years ago, and I know you're working on some speaking gigs to encourage young people to do well in school and to make academics an important part of their life. Why is that so important to you? Why is it so important that you do all this back here in your hometown?
I mean, coming from Haiti, like I wasn't born here, but coming from Haiti, it's like when I got here, I seen so many different things. So now that I'm like successful with what I did, I went through college, graduated early, I got a shot at the league, got hurt. I went to Winnipeg, came back, and now I'm like back home. I feel like helping these youth, like helping the youth do what's right. I mean, like I always tell them, grades come first. Without grades,
Mm.
you can't do anything. So no matter how good you is in sports or whatever, you don't have the grades, you can't play. So like you got to lead them the right way. Like I got a son, so he looking up to me, so I got to
Was he
show
now
him
about
the right.
three? He was three now.
No, he's 7.
7. Holy mackerel! Time,
He's
time
7.
sure flies. 7.
Yeah, he getting old now. So I gotta lead him the right way. I gotta show him the ropes. I don't want him growing up like I did.
Okay. Let's. You have the last word, Brisley. What do you think the Black Lives Matter movement want? What do you think they want? What's their intent right now?
The Black Lives Movement. I think. I mean, I think we all want like for these people to for these well mostly officers to stop killing us. Like everything we do. Like I said before, every day is another story of somebody getting killed. Like we all should just come together and want to stop racism. It might take a little minute, but Like Don said, if I feel like if every president of the teams or everybody that's hired and whoever, like if they come together with us, I think it will happen. It might take a little time, but it definitely will happen.
Okay, and Don, what do you think they want?
I think basically we just want to be treated as human beings. We want to be treated as everybody else is treated. I don't like for me especially. I think I don't want to drive down or be in my car and I see a police officer and I get scared. I don't want that feeling. I don't want to feel like
Don
Okay.
we're all
froze.
human
Uh,
beings
mm-hmm.
and that we all deserve to be treated equally. So I think that's really what they're trying to what Black Lives Matter is trying to accomplish.
And Jonathan, your take?
I think kind of tagging along what this boy said. But for me personally, I also think I want equity over equality. I feel like equality is kind of just putting us on the same platform. I feel like equity is giving us the same access to the same resources, and I feel like that's what I want. I feel like it's killing us in the street is priority number one because your best kind of investment in yourself is human capital. You can't do nothing if you know what I'm saying we're getting killed. But I think going past that, I remember my parents telling me you have to work twice as hard to get half of what they get just because you're black. And I feel like I don't. That shouldn't be. That shouldn't be what they have to tell me. And I shouldn't have to see that growing up. I want to have the same access to the same resources, and not to think I have to be more perfect just because of the color of my skin. You know what I'm saying? I feel like we can all live in harmony, but I also feel like they have to want it just as bad as we do. I feel like we can go hard for the rest of our lifetimes and something might not change because power dynamics, power structure, they have to kind of join with us and want it as bad as we do. And I feel like that's the only way something will actually change.
Okay, and that will do it for this edition of Timeout. Thanks to our guests tonight, Mr. Jonathan Ojo, Mr. Don Stevens Jr., and Mr. Brisley Estime. Pinch hitting for Noah and Trey, I am C. Ron Allen. From all of us here, good night.